When a life is at stake, miles from nowhere in the dead of winter, every second counts. I'm William Shatner. Tonight, true stories of caring people who choose to get involved on Rescue 911. We begin 9,000 feet up in the snow-covered Rockies of eastern Idaho on March 17th, 1989, as Bob and Karen Collins were enjoying the last day of their vacation.
We were out riding on the trails around the Yellowstone area. I was the last one in the group, and Bob and Brian were back behind us about half a mile. They wanted to bring up the rear.
Karen's husband Bob and Brian Turner planned to meet up with the others at the bottom of the trail.
Once they got where we thought there was a good enough distance where we could go zooming down the trail, that's when Bob and I took off. We were going down the trail, we were playing in the snow. It was a pretty straight trail. We were going up on the berms and everything, kind of zigzagging down the trail and everything, just having a good time going out into the powder. And all of a sudden he went over the curve and everything and disappeared out of my sight. I was expecting to see him go zinging through the trees and everything and down in that drop. When I didn't see him go through the trees, instantly I popped and I said, oh God, he hit a tree. When I got to him, he wasn't breathing or nothing. And I just about lost it right then and there. I thought sure he was dead.
Bob, you okay?
To me, it seemed like eternity, but eventually he did start breathing again. I heard some more snow machines coming down the trail and everything.
Steve Janes was the guide on a nearby magazine photo shoot.
I pulled off and started walking out, and I could see that he was in tough shape. I tried to reassure him quickly, telling them that I had an EMT with me.
Steve flagged down volunteer EMT Ed Wright.
Ed, we got someone hurt down the hill.
What happened? He hit a tree. He's bleeding from the eyes and the nose.
His snowmobile was stuck up against a tree, so it was obvious that he had gone, it looked like head first into the tree. He was bleeding from his eyes, his nose, his mouth, and his ears. He had cerebral spinal fluid coming out of his ears and his nose. Frankly, at that point, I didn't think that he was going to make it off the mountain.
Steve, go get some help.
With Bob in critical condition and the nearest trauma center more than 100 miles away, they needed a helicopter.
I grabbed an experienced test rider I had with us, and we took two machines that were best apt to getting us off the mountain safely and as quickly as possible.
When we continued,
even as I was racing up the mountain, I figured chances were that Bob would come out in a body bag anyway.
"44-year-old Bob Collins had been critically injured when his snowmobile crashed into a tree in a remote area of the Rockies. While others raced down the mountain to call for help, Ed Wright, an EMT who happened to be nearby, stopped to try and save Bob's life.
Blood just gurgling in his throat and everything.
He was having great difficulty breathing because of the blood, so I improvised a small suction unit using a bulb syringe and some surgical tube that I had. This man had some very, very serious head injuries, conceivably had broken vertebrae. I was worried that his brain would start swelling up, that his body functions would start to shut down. The wrong jolt or jar could have paralyzed the man for life. In my mind, had anybody on that mountain suggested that Bob just be dragged out without a backboard, I would have fought him to the death.
the phone at the base of the trail was more than 12 miles away. Steve took the shortest route down.
Even as I was racing up the mountain, I wasn't sure there was any need to go as fast as I was going. I figured chances were that Bob would come out in a body bag anyway.
I tell you to pull his helmet off.
The day of the accident, the medical bag that I had up on the mountain, I originally didn't have it with me. I had to go back for it when I left home. And as we were leaving West Yellowstone with our sleds packed, I left it again in the truck. And something told me to go back. So twice I went back for the bag. It was obvious to me that some type of fate came into play here, because the bag just wouldn't leave me. For 2 days, that bag tagged me, and it was obviously at this point why.
Bob and Brian didn't come down for quite a while, and I was getting concerned, and pretty soon a snowmobiler came by and said that there was a fellow on a brown sled who had been injured. And of course, first thing I think of is Bob. I guess the thoughts that ran through my mind were panic. We're away from home. What do I do? What can I do to help Bob? I wanted to be up there with him, but they felt it was better that I not go.
The thought that kept going through my mind is, Bob won't make it this long. And I just kept having to tell myself, all we can do is get help as fast as we can to him, and that's all we have the power to do.
Operator, I need Fremont County Sheriff's Department.
The call for help came in at 1:38 p.m. Because of the weather and mechanical problems, all helicopters had been grounded. A rescue unit and an advanced life support ambulance were immediately dispatched. But it would take at least 40 minutes before either crew could even make it to the base of the mountain.
I knew that it'd probably be better to get him up onto the trail where it'd be easier to work on him. We were working in some very deep snow back in the trees, and we were able to get enough people, about 7 of us, put together to get Bob out on the trail, very, very carefully.
So let's set him down on the trail. Is that good? Right there. Nice and easy.
We were about 60 miles from the scene of the accident, and it took us around 45 minutes to get there, so we made excellent time.
Because of the deep snow, the heavy ambulance was forced to wait at the base of the trail.
I was very frustrated when I had finished working on Bob that there's nothing more I could do. Basically, my bag of magic tricks was expended. Everything that I had in my bag that I could have used on that man, I had on him. At that point, I cut open his parka and took a blood pressure and a pulse. As I took the blood pressure and pulse, I kept falling, and kept falling, and kept falling. And I knew that it could conceivably keep going down till the man was dead.
When the ambulance arrived, I had been waiting about 2 hours. It seemed like forever. It seemed like time stood still because I didn't know his condition. I think I would have rather have known what was going on rather than trying to imagine all sorts of things.
Bob, are you okay? Bob, hold still. Bob,
finally, I could hear a snowmobile coming up the mountain.
2 hours after Bob's accident, EMTs arrived with a rescue sled.
Still. Come on, sit still, Bob. Bob. Breathe slow and deep, Bob. Come on, we gotta put some oxygen on you.
EMT Ed Brasher took charge at the scene.
When I arrive at a patient, and no matter how they look, I never think about dying. I'm there just to help the person and do what I can, and I don't think about the outcome except that he will live. We put the backboard on the rescue sled and proceeded to start strapping him down for the trip down the mountain, which we knew we had to tie him down where he could not move in any way, shape, or form if he was going to survive the trip down the mountain. To come down off the mountain probably took us 45 minutes to an hour because we had to go slow to protect the gentleman. We had to stop 3 or 4 times because the patient's eyes would just roll back in his head. And I would jump off and run up there, and he'd come right back to us again.
Okay, let's go on down with him.
And it scared me.
We had been waiting for about 45 minutes at least after we got there before they had him packaged and brought him out. I really expect him to be doing CPR on Mr. Collins when they got to the ambulance.
Bob, can you hear me? Yeah. Let's get him loaded. Get this spine board.
When he came up with the stretcher, they put me into the cab of the ambulance, so I never saw him. I heard him, and I smiled to myself because I could hear him talking. And I knew that was a good sign because he likes to talk.
8.5 hours after the accident, Bob finally got to a hospital where he was treated for blood clots on the brain, a fractured skull, and a cracked vertebrae. He remembers little about that day.
I've got a very fleeting impression of a tree immediately in front of my sled. The next thing I think I remember was being in the hospital.
Nearly a year later, Bob finally got the chance to pay a visit to EMT Ed Wright.
I have no memories of Ed that I can trust. So I walked up the door to meet Ed, having never met the man before, knowing he saved my life.
I don't know what to say.
You sure look a lot better than last time I saw you, Mr. Collins.
I feel better. And I don't know what to say. I don't know how to say it, except just thank you. That's all I can say, Ed.
What can you say when somebody grabs your hand and says, "Thank you for saving my life"? What do you say? I mean, there's no words.
You're looking good, too.
There's nothing more to say. I don't even think the best poets in the world can describe that.
It does an awful lot for me to know that somebody had taken the time and trouble to get the knowledge and the equipment, and then to apply it. Who thought enough to a stranger to do it on to take the time and trouble to go to the effort you did for somebody you didn't know. I can't explain. I could stand and talk for 5, 10, 15 minutes and not begin to express the depth of feeling I have for those people who helped me. Except thank you to all of you who helped get me out of the woods and let me continue my life as I'm doing. Thank you.
Oh, it feels good to sit down.